remote sensors. These are
No.
items designed to detect events at a far distance. I always like to indicate, and I didn't in this presentation, but that there's a paranoia that starts to develop amongst people when they're around spy satellites and other things. They see maybe too many movies or something, but I'll guarantee you that these satellites cost millions and billions of dollars, and their operation runs into the millions of dollars per day. Our 15 minutes of satellite data is a computer printout a little over 6 inches thick, of which we have technicians wade through it to get some of the items that don't pass muster, so to speak, in the first breath. And so what we have is a tremendous amount of data, and for the resources to be spent on determining who's visiting whom and what meeting, it would be in the intelligence agency's best interest to pick up the telephone and have the local sheriff or police drop by and pay them a visit rather than devote a very expensive reconnaissance satellite to take pictures of the license plates of the automobiles in the front yard. So, when viewing conditions are right, we can read the newspaper that's on the front yard of somebody's house from deep space. We can do that, and we've been able to do that for years. More important, though, is we can also use these for beneficial measures that beyond the surreptitious observation of our neighbors, and that is to look out to exploit mineral deposits, find oil fields, look at pollution tracking. For law enforcement, we can track vehicles that may present a problem to us. We can watch troop movements. We can see refugees and maybe allocate resources. We can look for crop failures.
You liken this to possibly the major event in terms of credibility of eyewitness reports, in terms of the data and the like. How significant do you think it is, therefore, that we have corroboration, if you like, from an American reconnaissance satellite that something was over Tehran at that time?
I think the primary importance was that it demonstrated graphically, I believe, for the first time, both the capability and the limitations. We spotted this thing, we had it, and yet we were defenseless against it. Fortunately, I think we were able to sort of sit back and say, it's happening to a neighbor, and therefore we can coolly observe it, as opposed to it's happening in my front yard and I must worry to defend my family against it. And I think that allowed us to put in some measures. I know one of them was to improve communication systems that enable us to get the information back sooner. And I think that the lessons learned from the Tehran were instrumental in helping us in the Gulf War, because we've greatly increased our capability between those two events in a short period of time, when you're talking about the time lag in military procurement and activities that go along there.
Yeah. Intrigued to learn of the post-Tehran reports as this thing sped through the Mediterranean and out towards the Atlantic. Presumably then, was there no means for the satellite technology? It might have obviously been passed on to another satellite, I don't know. No data to suggest that this thing was tracked by satellite at that time.
Our satellite did not track it. What I believe happened is, as they change energy states, they become, the spectrum of observation shifts. And when they change energy states, we get to the point where we can't really be tracked. That's where I said the ultraviolet would be good for that. Visible light, when they reach a high energy state, they disappear.
Yeah. Yeah. Where do you think satellite technology is going to be, say, 10, 20 years hence from now? And what impact do you think, generally speaking, that's going to have here for people on Earth?
I believe the big push, and we've already seen it start, will be on Earth resources management. And I mean that as the population continues to grow, we need to find new oil deposits to exploit. We need new mineral deposits. We need to really vigorously pursue monitoring the cleanliness of our water and our atmosphere. Where are the sources of pollution? And we can do that readily from space, so that the person who's doing the pollution can be tracked down, and not his innocent neighbor who happens to have a smaller checkbook. So the biggest growth area I see is in enabling you and me to have a much better life as a result of applying this technology to our day-to-day living experiences, traffic patterns, cattle and animal migrations, and there's all manner of, we're only limited by our imagination, by what we can see looking down at this beautiful planet of ours, and wisely trying to monitor and care for it and nurture it. And I think we've got an opportunity to do that now that we've never had before.
At the beginning of the year, Peter Gersten, head of Citizens Against UFO Secrecy, challenged the US government in court to come clean about its knowledge of flying triangles. After winning a preliminary judgment in his favour, he later lost the argument when the judge ruled in favour of the government. Although this interview was conducted before the appeal, it nonetheless affords a fascinating insight into the mindset and thinking behind one of ufology's most influential characters.
Peter, fantastic interest throughout the UK in the recent trials and tribulations, shall we say, regarding your efforts to challenge various government departments as to the dissemination, if you will, of documented information relating to triangular craft. You're the man on the spot, shall we say. How would you appraise the current situation? I mean, this is quite a unique thing, isn't it, to get the judge to actually side with you?
Oh, yes. This is the first time CAUSE has brought Citizens Against UFO Secrecy. In the last 20 years has brought maybe 6 lawsuits. This is the first time the judge has been receptive to my arguments, receptive to the point of directing a governmental agency to provide a UFO group with additional information.
Now, what is it about the triangles that you feel is so significant, or is this just a part of the whole big picture here?
Well, you're right on both accounts. Number one, it's part of the big picture, but it also involves an object the size of a football field that can hover, or what's described as, from witnesses, as floating, which is unusual to describe a mechanical craft, that can accelerate rapidly, attain high speeds, that's virtually noiseless, that has orbs around the sides that detach and attach. I think that since this object is being seen in populated areas over the last 20 years, not only in this country, but in England and in Belgium and other countries, I think it's time we found out about it. And what's more significant is that when we inquired of this object from the Department of Defense, they told us they conducted a reasonable search and can find no information on this object. As far as I'm concerned, they're lying to us. It can't be possible because they searched the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency and they had no information. They searched the Joint Chiefs of Staff and they had no information. And the Department of Defense is charged with gathering intelligence and providing security for the citizens of this country. So how can they not know about an object that's seen at treetop level in populated areas over major cities in this age of terrorism? Well, the Department of Defense, for whatever reason, has not come to the courtroom, has not sent any attorneys. They are represented by the U.S. Attorney's Office. And they just toe the party line. They treat this as any other Freedom of Information request. The agency does the search. If they don't find documents, they move to dismiss it on the grounds a reasonable search was done. If they find documents, they either release them or withhold them on national security grounds. And that's what I thought this case would be about. The Department of Defense would find documents and say national security, as they did in the other cases CAUSE brought, and that would be the end of it. No judge has gone against that ruling. But they didn't. They stated they found no documents. They did a reasonable search. So the U.S. Attorney is just putting forward that position that they didn't have to do an exhaustive search. All they had to do is a reasonable search. They did a reasonable search. There are no documents. What we submitted, what Citizens Against UFO Secrecy submitted, were 33 affidavits from people that actually saw the object, were willing to come forward, put it down on paper, and then swear to the contents. So we submitted this to the judge, said, Judge, look, this object exists, Judge. It exists not only over the last 20 years, but it was seen last month. You know, so how could they not have information? How could they have done a reasonable search and not found anything? And the judge was convinced that at least at this level they have to provide us with more information telling us about their search.
The obvious question then arises, where are we going with this now? Where does Peter Gersten and Citizens Against UFO Secrecy hope to take this now. What's the next step?
We hope to go where no group has gone before. We hope to go into the darkest recesses of these governmental agencies to search for the truth and to end the secrecy.
Although Bob and Ryan Wood kindly spoke of their majestic 12 research in Acapulco, here at Laughlin, Ryan took the opportunity to share with us just a part of his massive image portfolio.
Example, this happens to be on phone records for 30 June 47, back to Roswell. There's other documents. Here's one on 14 July 47, all talking about phone records. Basically, there's a big complaint that people are using the phone too much, and that only certain top-level brass can use the phone back to Washington because the lines are always jammed. You know, talk about good circumstantial evidence, and it's right here in historical typewriter, on negative, off microfilm. For somebody to fake this is an incredible amount of work for an unclear, nebulous purpose. This is the envelope where the other 77 pictures came, addressed to Tim Cooper and postmarked McLean, Virginia. And what was in this envelope was a series of color pictures, which I've broken into several different categories: craft, back channels, group photos, documents, MJ-12 portraits, and then autopsy. One of the craft pictures was a picture of the X-plane. And the X-plane is noteworthy in our documents because it's an experimental aircraft that crashed in New Mexico along the same time as one of the UFOs. And it's the earliest experimental aircraft which the U-2 spy plane was based upon. It was made by Convair. I'll mention this one for a second. This is a unusual looking craft that says DOD video. And what I just realized, really, after watching Wendell Stevens give his talk, is that this looks very similar to the egg beater type craft that was near Area 51, or was alleged to come from Area 51, with these funny looking protrusions. So I think that this is actually a U.S. built craft of some sort and not extraterrestrial. And that brings up a whole new thought in my mind of, am I getting junk along with... This is a picture of sort of an unknown object. It's unclear, and it's not sure that we don't have it right side up or upside down, but it looks like a spacecraft of some sort, although there seems to be like rivets or spark plug-like edges, which are consistent with some other witness testimony for craft. A couple of Russian or KGB officers, an MJ-12 back channel. We don't know his name. This one is a KGB intelligence chief. I can't remember his name right off the bat, but
you have identified him.
Yeah, one of our friends has got a name. And then here's a group picture of a variety of the MJ-12 players. Forrestal being front and center with Vandenberg and Bradley over here. And this is an admiral of some sort. He has a naval uniform on. Yeah. But I don't know his name.
And this one around the table.
Okay. Yeah. And this is a picture of the Scientific Advisory Board in 1947 with Theodor von Karman at the head of the table and the label of MJ-12. It's not clear if everyone was cleared or briefed for MJ-12, but I think that many people were involved in the reverse engineering. It may have been parceled out and they've only given one aspect of the problem to work on, but these people were most likely involved in